welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Vila Bianca.
This is Skeptic Generation.
And we're off our meds. Oops.
Hey, V, how's it going?
Okay. It's going fine.
Yeah.
Fine, I guess.
We're trying our best.
We are on the struggle bus today.
We are. And who knows how that's going to affect things, but we are going to do the best that we can. Hey, everybody. We're glad you made it. Happy September.
Oh, it is September, isn't it?
It is. I was able to update the outro this morning. I just, by the way, for people who are patrons and are wondering if, why they may not be in the outro, it turns out that Patreon doesn't always notify us. And because of that, it may have been an oversight. Just shoot us an email at contactskepticgeneration@gmail.com and we'll be...
Or through Patreon.
Or through Patreon, yeah. And let us know. We'll make sure that we add you in. That said, this episode looks different.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can tell, but we've got elbow room.
We do. And that is thanks to our support. So we had a patron who, I think I said this on an earlier episode, had gotten one of the cameras off of our Amazon wish list. And we were really excited about it. But turns out it's a real camera and not Eric's camcorder that we've been using and needs a lens. And so we rented some lenses for now. And this is our first episode doing that. So it actually has a different feel. Let us know in the comments what you think of the change up. I think it looks nice. I really like this.
Yeah, I mean, I do like being close. But
yeah,
we had that like I was saying before, like both parents like in the phone trying to like both be on screen and like pushing each other out of the way kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So this is also nice.
It is. Before we dive into calls, let's talk about announcements.
Cool.
So the first announcement is we have our first verses in a while coming up, don't we?
Yes. So next Tuesday on the 13th. At 6 p.m. Central, we are going to be going live and talking about wisdom versus knowledge and how they overlap, if they overlap, which is a subset of which. We have just kind of been mulling this one over for a little bit.
We have, and it's been a really, really fun conversation.
There have been some people online that are like, if you don't know the answer to that right away, you shouldn't be hosting a show about skepticism. And I'm like, oh boy, brother.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one thing to know a definition, but it's another thing to have a in-depth discussion about where those things differentiate and how using them in their own contexts help us better understand the world around us.
Yeah. And hopefully it will also be call-in. We're going to see if we can figure that out. So if you do join, you can jump in and give us your 2 cents. Tell us who's right and who's very, very wrong.
And in theory, it is entirely limited to the bad internet where we are. But in theory, we may be able to do verses in 4K. May. I don't know if we can.
Well, we have to give the lenses back on Tuesday.
That's right.
So.
But we did have somebody say that they may pick one up. Maybe. Fair. Okay. It is a possibility that we may be able to do it in 4K. We may be back to my camcorder, but we're going to try our best.
We are still working out the kinks.
Yeah.
But that's the only big announcement that I think we've got for today.
I think so. Before we dive into calls, though, we just want to say that this episode is brought to you by you. If you like what we do and you want to get an ad-free version of the podcast or an ad-free version of the live stream, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. We sincerely appreciate it. Or if you want to take a look at that Amazon wish list that we just mentioned, the link is there as well, tiny.cc/SG wish list. All comments are in the description, and yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, if you would like to talk to us.
Oh yeah, that's good.
You can do so by calling the number 585-526-8774 or using the link tiny.cc/callSG. You can use that link from anywhere in the world for free. We pay for you to talk to us. So.
We do. Getting the messages from people saying, oh, well, I really can't afford an international call. It's like, no, that's baked in. We take care of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's dive into calls.
Okay.
And hey, everybody, please be patient with us. We are off our meds, and we're trying our best.
Yeah, for those of you who are wondering, that's not us being like, oh, haha, we're being kind of spicy today. This is literally both of us are off of necessary medications.
Yeah, welcome
because
to-
the U.S. healthcare is shit.
Yeah.
So we are struggling just a little bit.
And it's going to take me at least a week to get my ADHD medication.
Yeah. And like, if anybody has been wanting to call in and trounce us, just absolutely hand us our asses. Today is probably the correct day to
Yeah.
do that. Just giving you fair warning on that one.
Let's try our best. Okay, let's start out with Javier, who called in from Puerto Rico. They were our first caller today, and let's see, it says, many laws are the results of legislating one's own personal morality. I don't know, let's see the take on it. Javier, you're live with Eric and V.
Hey there, guys. How's it going?
Doing really well, considering. So I'm having trouble understanding what exactly it is you wanted to ask or talk about. Could you give us a little more information?
Oh, sure, definitely. Also, but this is Javier from South Carolina, and before that from Miami too, by the way.
Yeah.
First call from my homeland.
Nice.
Okay.
Very cool. Okay, so what do you got?
So, so in terms of the topic, what I mean is, in discussions that I've heard about church-state separation, and by the way, I'm very much in favor of church-state separation. But in discussions on the topic that I've heard, I've heard people say you shouldn't be trying to put forth laws based on your personal religious morality. You know, big example. You know, insert demographic that used to not be able to be legally married here. We all know that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course I see that point. I don't think that all of everyone should. I'm sorry, I got to organize my thoughts today.
No, that's okay. If you'd like a little bit of help, I can pick up from here.
No, I think I can finish. It's just
Sure.
man, it's my first call in a while. I'm getting a little flustered.
Oh, no worries.
We're good.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. A lot, but you got laws. For example, let's see. Keep it advertiser friendly. A crime that rhymes with girder. I mean, that is bad, and that is against the law, and it's because most people generally agree that something like that is wrong. You know, it's immoral. It's unethical.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that many laws are the case where people are taking something they view as morally objectionable and making it illegal, or taking something they view as morally virtuous and making a legal provision for it.
Right. So here's kind of where I stand with it. I don't think it has to do with personal morals, and I would like to draw a couple of kind of dividing lines here. The first is, I think it is just a fact of reality that laws are a society codifying what they believe is moral or ethical. And so you can learn a lot about a society by studying their laws. And it changes over time. And so I think the fact that it changes over time definitely underscores the fact that, you know, morals and ethics change as people change. You know, there was a time when slavery was legal in the United States, and there was a time when slavery was legal in most other places in the world. And that is kind of, we're no longer as a society there. And so it changes. But the idea that there's an alternative kind of blows my mind, because what would an alternative look like? Like if I found a bunch of rules that were just kind of inscribed in the side of a mountain, would those rules be more legitimate? You know? Like,
Well, I guess if you're talking to a fundamentalist, they would probably say yes, but I don't think so.
yeah, so I think that the downside to legislating religious beliefs, or legislating a holy book as the source of laws, is that over time that society cannot change. It kind of becomes stuck in the morality of whatever time that book was written. And so I feel like it would become an impediment to us moving forward. That said, it doesn't really have to do with, well, you shouldn't do it based on your personal opinion. I think that it has just a lot to do with what the society writ large decides.
I see your point, and but what I would say is that society at large, there's people with different demographics. Of course, some of those demographics are religious demographics, and even though these people may be deriving their morality from their religious text, that doesn't change the fact that it is the morality that they hold, and they are gonna vote based on that morality that they hold, no matter where it came from.
Well, but the thing is, I think you said it exactly right. They may claim that they're deriving their morality from their religious text, but the fact is, most often it's ass backwards. It's looking to a religious text to try and justify things that you already think are moral. Finding a validation for something that may be otherwise viewed as awful. Right? If somebody is homophobic and, can point to verses in the Bible that appear homophobic, then they can say, see, my opinion is validated through the Bible, and it provides this kind of leverage for bigotry that I think you wouldn't get if you hadn't raised that holy book to this level of importance.
I see that. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to continue, but I also want to give you the chance to say something as well, because I don't want to just railroad you here.
Okay, then. Thank you. So the thing, yeah, I definitely agree with the thing about people that may hold a discriminatory view, may derive it from their religious text, and they're just using that to validate or justify it. But I also think there's the aspect of because they're validating it via the religious text, that means they already hold that view. Mm-hmm. So, present or absent that text, they would just try to find some other sort of justification for it.
Right. And if you can remove that, I think I don't want to beat a dead horse on that one. But what I do want to say is that if you have a large demographic of religious folks in a population, then they are going to influence the laws. That is because that society is being influenced by that demographic. And so if it is being reflected in the laws, it's because that demographic is there, and because, I don't want to say that there's not going to be, or there can't be, religious influence, because as long as there are religious people in a society, there will be that influence. We just need to be watchful and make sure that we don't have overreach into someone's religious viewpoints, taking away the rights or privileges of other people because of, their own bigotry.
Yes, I see your point, and I agree. I am it would be amusing if it wasn't so horrible. My mother in particular, she does have quite a bit of homophobia, and she gets mad that I don't. And I know that her homophobia is religiously inspired. Thou shalt not lie, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't want this sort of thing to bleed into the laws, but I don't know, I'm more of a live and let live, you do you kind of guy in general. So that sort of thing never gelled well with me. Mm-hmm. And that's why another reason I said that I am in favor of something like church-state separation. A theocracy is basically a worst-case scenario, one of the worst-case scenarios in my view. But at the same time, I also recognize that people will vote their values, their morality, no matter where they come from.
I think we're talking about two different things, though, and I'm sorry to jump in at the last minute here and completely turn this horse around, but I found it very interesting to live in the world where laws are dictated by what people think are moral. That's an interesting viewpoint. I disagree with it. I think that laws are about power, and I think that morality has nothing to do with it 99% of the time. And
really,
yeah, law is not moral. Law can be backed up by morality if you're trying to justify its existence, but parking on the side of the street after 5 p.m. isn't a moral thing.
That's fair.
The majority of laws are to maintain power. And the people who get to make the laws are the ones who get to decide where that power goes and where that power stays. And the fact that so many of these laws are get aroundable by paying a fine, right? Like if you think about, let's say we're speeding ticket, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, don't endanger other people. I guess that could be a moral argument for not speeding, but the reason that speeding tickets exist is to give people excuses to pull people over for other things a lot of the time. And if you get out of it, you can either use a privilege that has nothing to do with morality, or you can pay a fine, which has nothing to do with morality, and then be like, okay, you're good now. You paid us the $50 and got us our quota so we can, go to the police ball or whatever.
What a pessimistic view of things.
It's deeply pessimistic, but it has nothing to do with morality 99% of the time, outside of upholding it for the average person who does indeed vote their values. So Javier, I think you're absolutely right. The average person is given that argument. Hey, this is a moral thing to do. You should do that thing. And they buy it, but that's not the reason the laws exist. The laws don't legislate morality. The laws legislate people.
I don't know about that. I can see the point that you're making, but I think that while I'm willing to grant that what I said is overly simplistic, I would grant that yours is as well.
Well, everything we are going to say about this topic, I think, is going to be overly simplistic.
Fair
just
enough.
Due to our limited understanding of it.
Here's my piece there, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at jails, right? Uh-huh. And we go, okay, punishing people by putting them in jail, it does not have the impact that we want it to have. It turns out that rehabilitating people and giving them skills sets.
No. Oh, are we going down this route? Wait, where are you going with this? Please tell me.
Well, let me finish and I'll tell you.
Yes,
yeah? Okay. So a model that seeks to give people skills and work with them has been seen to have better long-term effects on whether or not those people are going to commit those crimes again, right?
Okay.
So if you look at our punitive legal system and say jails are awful and we should not have them, or essentially they're doing it wrong, but that doesn't mean that what they're doing is for bad reasons. They're just their execution is awful. Right?
See,
no.
Prisons, like the prison industrial complex where private prisons buy prisoners.
Right? Oh my God, bad execution.
No, it's not bad execution. It's perfect execution. It's doing exactly what they want.
Who the fuck is they, V?
Do you know how much of our economy runs on prison labor? And why there is so much pushback against rehabilitation? Because they are making the same exact arguments they made to preserve slavery.
Okay.
Our towns, our states could not run without prison labor.
Javier, look what you started, by the way.
Yeah. Sorry, Javier. This is way off topic.
No. It's okay. We're picking this up. V, are you making a case then that someone getting arrested or being pulled out of a population because they're a danger to themselves or others is somehow bad?
I'm saying that the majority of people in prison are not there for violent crime.
Oh, good. I'll agree with you on that, right? That's not my question. Would you like me to ask it again?
Oh, wow, you're spicy today.
I am because I feel like you hand waved away the baby with the bathwater.
I'm not saying that I don't want to get into the specifics because I don't know enough about it, frankly. But there is the way that we legislate laws, the people who feel the brunt of that, and the way the prison system is set up is not, oops, we can get people to the moon, but I guess we can't figure out how to get people to not, smoke marijuana anymore. Like,
Okay.
the goal is what is currently happening. This is the goal for the majority, not maybe for the individual security guard who thinks they're doing a good job or who might be a kind person or, whatever. I'm not saying every individual is in on it, but I'm saying that the system is created specifically for this reason. It's not, oopsie, I guess that's bad, but we're not going to do anything about it. It's, oh yes, we now get free labor from people who happen to be mostly people of color imprisoned for nonviolent crimes.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's a stretch to say that that's intentional.
So that I agree. And that is not the point that I'm making. That's not the question that I asked.
Okay, what is your question?
Okay, so
hold on.
in order to
Javier's still on the line.
Yes, Javier. I think we want to pick this up. Is there anything else you wanted to add in before we kind of argue with each other for a little bit?
Sure.
What's up?
Just that, I'm a little surprised. Normally, I hold back my cynicism and pessimism. I guess you could call it a black-pilled mentality about the system we have, criminal justice, legislative, political in general. I typically hold it back because most people aren't very too keen on it. But it seems that V and I agree on a lot, and I don't have to hold it back necessarily. I have no faith in this system. I think the system is crumbling, and it's bad, and I don't like it.
Yep.
I agree
I'm glad you feel
with you.
seen, Javier.
I agree with you, but if it sounds like you're unwilling to grant, I'm talking to V on this one. It seems like you're unwilling to grant the point that I'm trying to make. And
I
if that's
just
the
don't
case, then I'm not
understand
even moving forward.
I would be very happy to hear the point again now that we have established that that's not what you're talking about.
I said that several times. Okay, so let me use an analogous situation to try and help point this out, okay?
Okay.
So would you agree that religious institutions prop up and have been used as a tool to continue a patriarchal kind of reign over Western society?
Yeah, sure.
That's why it was made. That's the goal of it, right? Was the goal of it to prop up patriarchy? I mean, you can't say that wasn't on purpose, V.
I mean, it was one of the goals. Sure, yeah.
Okay, so
I'm not saying every pastor who goes to a pulpit has that goal.
No,
but I'm saying that the reason the system works the way it does is with intention.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing.
Okay.
I'm being overly simplistic by saying that is the entire reason it's there, is to prop up patriarchy. There is no other reason, right? Like, it's just that.
I'm very confused. Where are we going with this?
Sure. So when I talk about societies and laws and legislating morality, which is what I think the best version of a society would do, your only points are all of the shitty things that are going on in the United States. I agree with you. That's not the point that I made. The point that I made, that I'm trying to make, is that societies, you can learn a lot about a society by taking a look at what they are legislating, because what people ideally would be voting for or would be creating would be a codification of what they would view as moral or ethical.
On the individual level, yes.
And no, on the broad strokes level. On the individual level, no. On the individual level, I agree with you. On the individual level, in the United States, you have all of these problems. You have the prison industrial complex, right? That would be on the individual level. And so your objections, I totally understand, but it sounded like your objections were trying to nullify or to be in conflict with the first point that I was making, and that is that societies ideally would be creating laws to codify their moral or ethical, opinions.
Yeah, and see, I just don't think that that's the function that laws serve. And I think that as soon as you get into the realm of legislating morality, you get into the realm of overreach. Like, if that's what your goal is, to legislate somebody else's morality, you've overreached. That's an overstep. And the goal is to...
Now, this is Javier's call.
Right.
This is Javier's call. Okay,
Right.
So you're taking the opinion that legislating morality is overreach. So what is there left to legislate?
Practical shit. If you want to legislate,
Okay,
don't park here because the street needs to be clean.
Let's start with murder, right? Do you think that
It's
that's
very-
amoral?
No, but it's very practical to not have people murder each other.
Oh, so it's practical, but it doesn't have anything to do with morality.
Well, it also happens to have a moral context, sure, but that's not what is instigating the law. I'm not legislating all the things I think are immoral. I'm legislating the things that I think practically would make society very difficult to live in.
I don't know if I can get on board with the amoral, like that doesn't feel like that matches up with the world that we see around us.
Right, because it's sold to us as morality. We are consumers of the ideology of the law that is of the place we live, and it has been presented to us as moral things. This is moral. Follow the law. Be a good citizen. What all of this shit. And the reason that we tie it so intrinsically is because of that rhetoric. And I'm not saying that the people who are telling us to be good citizens are intentional about all of this. But that is what's happening. That's why it's difficult to parse those apart. But if you're going to say, don't park on this street at this time because it needs to be cleaned, that's not a moral argument. There's nothing moral there. That's a law that's practical that can then be enforced. But like to argue about law from the standpoint of morality, I think is granting too much ground to the people who are making the laws and assuming too much about them, that they are making it because they really feel deep in their little hearts that it's good and right, as opposed to, hey, if you can pay your way out of this, then the law doesn't apply to you.
I don't think that's an opposed to. I think that is a sniping at something that should be sniped at that doesn't touch on the larger point. All it does is distract from the larger point.
Well, my point is that...
No, I got your point. I even conceded your point. I granted you entirely. I mean, I can give you more affirmations, but I agree.
Oh my God. I think we may need to take a time out. You need to stand in a corner for like 5 minutes.
I agree with you.
I'm saying that based on Javier's call, the argument that I am understanding is, how are we telling religious people that they cannot legislate their morals when what we are doing all of the time is legislating our morals? It's a double standard that we say you can't do that, but we can. And the way to get out of that double standard and to avoid that argument, because I don't think it's a good one when said in good faith, is it's not about morals. It's about power. And we need to make sure that some one person is not legislating someone else's morality. That should never be the case. Not with a secular government, not with a religious one. It's not a double standard, because the argument that law and morality are somehow the same thing is wrong. So that's where I've been coming from this whole time. I think we should probably move on, because Javier has been so deeply patient with us on this call.
Yeah, we've been arguing in front of you. Javier, we appreciate your call. This has been fun.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this. It's been plenty fun.
Thank you for calling in. You definitely got some hackles up.
You did. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
And I'm sure people in the comments, oh, they're breaking up. No, we love this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, who do you want to take?
You're hosting. Who do you want to go with next?
Okay, let's go with Connor in Texas.
Okay.
Connor wants to respond to
guys.
you. Hey, Connor, it says in the comments you want to answer V's question about women in the universal house of faith.
Oh yeah, Dale called the other week.
Right. Just to recap, so you have called before and talked about Baha'i. We've gone over different Baha'i things, and I had said at one point that I was frustrated that at the highest level, which would be the universal house of faith, women are not allowed to hold positions, and I saw that as inherently sexist. And then when Dale called in, Dale tried to walk around the idea without being, trying not to be sexist, but making a inherently sexist claim. And V got really pissed off about it. And I would love to hear what you have to say about it, because I have no idea how that view can be held without being recognized as sexist.
So It was during the call with Dale, and personally, I think that y'all's conversation was just like page adjacent to each other, so maybe that's why y'all had a disconnect with her. But anyway, so it was. V asked Dale a question during that call, which I hadn't thought of before, and it was you asked Dale. What is so progressive about it? Like, that was the specific question. And this is a speculative answer I have.
Okay.
I'm not going to pretend it's a perfect answer, but it's the best one I could come up with that is both the least crazy and takes the least amount of mental gymnastics.
Okay. Love both of those things.
So given when the faith started, or back in the mid 1800s in Persia, and this is taking all of what the Baha'i faith says about women in a holistic thought process, is that at that time, women were legally all over the world second-class citizens. So this is where I'm just starting from at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it goes to the point where, so basically what the Baha'i faith says about women is that from a legal standpoint, they should not be second-class citizens and should have equal rights to men. So that where they're not sold off into marriage by their fathers, they're not owned by their husbands, they can choose their own marriage partner, they can decide to go get an education, stuff like that.
Cool. Where does it say that?
Well, it says it's in the scriptures.
That's very specific for the 1800s. That's kind of cool. Do you have like a verse that you can tell us?
Sorry, with all of the different texts, like I said before, Baha'u'llah himself wrote 10 times more volume than the Bible. So
Right.
it's kind of, some of it's a little spread around, so I don't have a specific, this book, this line,
Okay.
off the top of my head.
I'm only asking because I know that a lot of Christians do that too, where they will say, well, the Bible clearly says this, and it's from an amalgamation of different verses plus what they may have learned in church plus some of their own interpretation. And while I agree with you that those are good things and things that should be pursued, I do want to make sure that we are being as accurate as possible when saying that your texts say these things as opposed to we have interpreted our text to say these things. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I can assure you I have personally read these lines of scripture.
Okay.
Because it's been over a time period of a better part of a decade that I've done all this, or all the of what I've learned of the faith.
Okay.
So I'm not going to remember specifically where it's all at.
All right. That's fine. So yeah, continue.
So continuing on. This goes into another. This next part goes into another aspect of the faith, and this is how I'm tying it all together. Is that personally, as a faith, we believe that the different messengers, every time they get sent, in a way, they essentially have to make small compromises to make the broader teachings just a little bit more palatable for all of society across the world. Like I said, I'm not pretending this is a perfect answer. So my only speculation is that women were left out of just the universal house of justice as a compromise for the misogynists.
I mean, that's
to get them on board with looking at them being equals under a legal sense.
Is that documented anywhere? Like, because
No, like I said, this is completely speculative on my part.
I mean,
like, we have no clarification on the issue.
Yeah, and Connor, like, I think you're probably right. Like, that makes sense to me, that the equality of women in the highest position of power in this religion was not a, well, we hate women and so we're never going to let it was probably a cultural compromise that just happened, and women were the sacrificial lambs on this particular slaughter. Happens quite often, turns out. But
Right.
yeah, okay. But if my concern here then becomes, well, that's a very secular way to look at a religious thing. And while I'm all for that, it does make me wonder how you can determine which things were done via compromise in order to pursue an end goal, and which are, actual goals that were handed down and should be adhered to, right? Like, this feels very close to cherry picking.
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, there's no way to tell. This is all personal speculation.
Okay. I respect that. So why do you need this particular set of guidelines at all if what you're doing is looking through them and saying, here are things that I agree with, here are things I don't, I'm going to adhere to the things I agree with and explain away or, dismiss the things that I don't agree with. It sounds like the Baha'i faith is useful maybe as a starting point to be like, hey, what is my personal morality? Let me look at it through this lens. But it doesn't feel like you're adhering to anything outside of what you already feel is morally true, which isn't a bad thing, but it doesn't feel like it's leading your morality in any way.
And
well, not for nothing, the faith has helped me move in a more positive direction than before I found it in some regards. That's a whole conversation in of itself.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt.
Another
Lord of the
time.
Rings and Artemis Fowl helped me move in a positive direction back when I was thinking about all this stuff for the first time as a teenager. Like, yeah, it can be very helpful. And there is nobody is saying that it can't be or that there isn't positive outcomes from it. But
I was just wanting to clarify that it's not just I don't view it as just I'll ignore what I don't like and only go with what I do like in the moment. I will try and look at is maybe what I'm currently believing, maybe there's some deficiency in one regard or another, and take a close look at that kind of situation still.
Oh yeah, and you can absolutely cherry pick very collegiately. Like it's not an either or situation. Some people, yes, will just like grab a verse of their holy text out of thin air and quote it at you in order to get their way, right? But there are lots of people who do a lot of deep study and look at the language that was originally spoken and figure out how that fits into things, and that's still cherry picking. It's just scholarly cherry picking. And
yeah,
again, like, if that's what you want to do with it, cool. But the question then just comes up for me, what is this faith giving you beyond a good starting buffet?
So let's I'll keep going on this, but I also want to loop back around to hold on, I'm about to lose my train of thought here. Want to loop back around to all right, so if I can clarify that in a little bit, I will. So, the you were saying the why I believe some things, but almost supposedly, but while still having other things you may not necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
So, on a personal level, I see the faith as a constructive, overall, like net positive, constructive method for building and creating a better world. It may not be perfect to what way some people see it, or it may be the exact opposite as some people say it, but I see it as a way for people to come together from around the world to work together to build a better society. and it's more like the you swallow your pride a little bit kind of thing in order to do what you believe is a broader, more necessary goal.
And the equality of women is swallowing one's pride?
No. That's the important thing. The women not being on the House of Justice would be the, I'll just swallow my pride in being in that aspect so that the legal status of women is made equal to men in every regard.
Oh, okay. So I do want to touch on one more thing, and then I know you want to jump in.
Okay.
This reminds me of the tactic that was taken during, I want to say, the 1960s, when they were trying to stop gay people from being criminalized, right? And at the time, you could be wearing a particularly nice outfit, and a cop would be like, that looks gay, I'm going to beat this person up, and that would be fine. Or if you were caught wearing more than, I believe, 3 articles of clothing that were designated for another gender, you could be arrested legally. And it was criminalized, essentially. And the thing that they did was they got it into the DSM-4, 3 at that point. They classified it legally as a mental illness. Not because they thought it was a mental illness, but because they were like, we need to get this off of the books as a criminal thing. If we can say it's just like a mental health thing, then we're not going to be criminalized for it anymore. And we can maybe start getting some help, like support from the medical institution and not be thrown in prison. Which, okay, like, I get it. You have to do desperate things in order to, find some level of relief from being persecuted. So if that's what your argument is for this, it's practical at the time, but the problem is it then became a mental disorder legally, and that has been an uphill battle to try and undo. And it's still happening right now with trans stuff. And so the medicalization of anything that is not cisgender and heterosexual is a direct result of this tactic. So my point is, I get it if it's a short-term stopgap for a long-term goal of equality, cool. But you can't just sit there and be like, okay, well, we did that, so now we just deal with it. It should be a step in a much, much more progressive direction, because otherwise it's going to, and it sounds like it has from talking to Dale, impact people right now in the long term in negative ways. So that's all I have to say on that.
I don't want to... I think that there was a disconnect between y'all and Dale, so I don't think it would be constructive for our conversation to try and go into what she may have been thinking or intended to say, because we don't really know.
Oh, agreed.
Okay,
I don't know
so
what she intended to say. I just know what she said. So
I believe I understand where you're coming from, but just to make sure, could you go into what you imagine going forward from your perspective of what you're thinking at the moment?
Going forward, maybe.
As for us in the faith, what you meant by what you just previously said,
well,
what were you imagining as going forward with it?
You made an argument that this was done somewhere in the 1800s, and at the time women didn't have legal rights, and so there was a concession made. And this is, granted, your theory, and I'm running with it. So now women have legal rights, kind of, in the U.S. And so what is the next step? I can't tell you what your faith should do next, but I'm asking, what is the next step to get that concession off the table and actually grant full autonomy and equality to all genders as opposed to just one? like, it's 200 years. If you guys think that that's a long time, like, you've had a while. What's next? Are we just sitting on this concession forever, or are we moving forward?
So you're asking why not move forward and take it off and update it essentially to allow women on?
Yeah, for a start, that sounds great.
So this gets into another aspect of the faith, which is about how it goes into how we want to avoid. So I'm going to need you to bear with me on this one. So it goes, to start with, it goes into how we are supposed to avoid creating sectarianism within the faith. And it requires us to, like, even though essentially we're not really allowed to change anything about the faith now that it has been established back in the 1800s.
But I thought you were all about
And
progressive revelation. How do you justify progressive revelation if you can't change anything?
The progressive revelation happens on a period of eons and millennia.
But that's still change.
It's still change, and so the change would come supposedly, as we believe, when the next messenger appears.
So it sounds like you're saying that you're waiting to do the right thing until this next messenger appears. It sounds like your God is actually getting in the way of you being moral or ethical. Like it sounds like the thing that is an impediment to something that you know is fixable, like, is that God. Why would you hold that up as a source of morals when it sounds like it is getting in the way of moral action?
Because the point of this is to affect the global society, not just like our Western society.
I really don't think that answers. I don't think that answers the question at all.
I was just starting.
Oh, okay. So again, it sounds like, right, that this deity is standing in the way of doing the right thing. The right thing being granting full equal rights to women, right? And the thing that is in the way is the thing that you're propping up as the source of morality. And it sounds like, number one, your morality is better. Number two, you're able to act on it in a way that God or, that deity is unable to. So, like, just, I have no idea how you could view that God as the source of morality. It's just in the way of moral behavior.
So there is a goal that we believe is determined to happen in this era, this 1,000-year era for humanity. Mm-hmm. And it is considered the most important thing for us to achieve. And it is literally called the center of the covenant for the faith.
What is this thing?
And do what?
What is this thing that you're supposed to achieve?
Global unity of mankind.
Okay, so
that is the...
Connor, do you have kids?
Continue.
Hold on. Wait. I want you to go where you're going, but we have this line that is being contradicted in the moment. So
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. How on earth are you supposed to say at the same time, we cannot change anything about our religion, but what our goal is ultimately is to unify all of humankind? How is that? What?
So the reason for that is we are required to avoid sectarian division and allowing anyone to say that they can just change when they don't have what we believe is the authority to change it. Then that would lead to sectarianism, and the whole point of avoiding sectarianism is to avoid sectarian violence. And if we cannot ourselves remain united, how could we ask anyone else outside the faith to join us and uniting the rest of the world when it doesn't even look like we can do it for ourselves.
So oppress the people who are not going to violently fight back and make it seem like you all are unified? Like, it sounds to me like the only reason that this is not a problem is because you're not worried that women in the Baha'i faith are going to get sectarian on your asses and maybe do a little bit of violence because they're not viewed as full and equal, like, people. Like, We're not
allowed to even be violent in the first place.
Okay, so why is sectarianism a problem?
We've seen the history of sectarian.
But you're not
violence.
allowed to be violent, so like sectarianism shouldn't be an issue.
It also says that in the Bible, and yet we know the history of violence with Christianity.
Okay, so then you don't get to use "we're not allowed to be violent" as an excuse and not to answer my question, but it's fine to ignore it when you're giving an answer. Come on, dude, you're going around in circles.
Okay. Hold on, I think we got a little. Could we start over from your point of view?
My point.
Let's.
Sure. My point here is that. Oh, Eric's got the zoom up. Look, my point here is that you are talking about unity and you're talking about uniting all of humankind, while at the same time actively denying certain rights to a group of that humankind. And it sounds to me like the only reason you're allowed to get away with it is because you don't think that the group that is currently being denied all equal rights is going to be sectarian and violent about it. It's not actually unity unless everybody actually is equal. And if they're not, then that's not unity. It's the presentation of unity. Maybe you'll convince other people to join you initially, but that's a lie. I'm pretty sure lying is bad, right? Or is that something you can still do for the next 1,000 years until the next messenger shows up?
No, it's said that we should be honest individuals.
Okay, so how is it honest to say, hey, look at us, we're so unified. Also, this group of people doesn't have full and equal rights yet, but we don't want to tell anybody that or act like that's a problem or combat that because then it'll look like we don't actually have unity. That's a lie.
So I think I may be on a different page. Just to clarify, are we still talking about the women on the House of Justice?
Yes, I'm talking about you making the claim that there were concessions on the equality of women in order to pursue the larger goal of the religion.
Right.
And I'm saying, hey, maybe move past that and maybe start getting those women all those same rights, including being on this universal house of faith or justice or whatever. And you're saying, oh, we can't do that because that'll be sectarian and we need to present a unified front to people. And so my question is, if you are presenting a unified front while at the same time denying equal rights to everyone in your unified group, that's not unity. That is oppression. And if you are presenting it as unity, that is a lie. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Like I said, I never expected any of this to be a perfect answer, and to get to it, none of us have the authority to change it in the faith.
Which is where we get back to, it sounds like your faith is getting in the way of doing the right thing.
Right, because you just said, hey, here's an example of, isn't the whole reason that Baha'i faith is better than other faiths because they allow you to interpret it and do what, like, use it how you want to? Like, isn't that a selling point that you gave us? Like, one of the first calls you had that, like, oh, I was encouraged to go out and look at other faiths and, you know, make it my own and really, like, build my own morality. Like, how is that not changing it?
I don't think I used those words. I'm not going to be able to remember specifically our previous conversation when we talked about that.
So you're saying there is a dogma in the Baha'i faith that you cannot stray from?
There's no dogma.
Okay, then what are we talking about? If you can't change it, what is it if it's not a dogma? You can't at once have no dogma and be completely mentally free and also be told, but you can't change it or question it because it's not negotiable, right? Those two things can't exist in the same space.
No, we can question it.
But you can't change it.
Right.
Okay, that's a bullshit answer. I hope you're not buying that. I hope that you aren't allowing other people to tell you that you can question things, but you don't get to fucking do anything about it. Because that's infantilizing as fuck for you, and I would be offended if I were you and people were telling me that.
Really? Could you explain why you see it that way?
Sure. Hey, Eric.
Go for it.
We are now going to sell our house and move to Buenos Aires.
Ooh. I mean, wrong direction, but that's fine.
Okay, so let's pretend you're like, hey, but V, we don't have the money for that, and I'm going to go into debt if I need to do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well, you can ask that question, but we're still going to Buenos Aires, and you don't get to decide if we're doing that or not with your life. You get to express your concerns to me, but I'm not going to do anything about it.
But like, if I'm concerned that I'm gonna go into debt, but I don't have a choice, does that mean my debt goes away, or am I?
No. You still have to deal with it, but that's a concession you have to make.
Oh, it sounds like you're treating me like a child.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm treating you like a child or like a servant or like somebody who does not have full autonomy over their own decisions. Was that helpful?
No, I see where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
You deserve better than that.
Yeah, that's my entire point here. You are a fully autonomous person with a fully formed or developing morality, like all of us have. And the fact that there are people telling you that you can question things, but you can't change them, or that there are things that you must make concessions on for the good of the group in a way that violates your own personal moral inklings is problematic, man. Like, get out of there.
Well, first of all, I do believe that the individual should be willing to should be able to submit to the community as if it's for a necessary good.
Okay, so actually, here's the example that I wanted to throw out there.
Okay, go for it.
Sounds good. Connor, for this example, you have a baby. Okay, congratulations.
Okay. All right,
Connor, I'm going to put your baby through college. I'm going to set up that fund, at some point in the future. I'm just going to come to your house and punch your baby every day until then, right? So I'm going to come to your house every day, maybe 9 o'clock. I'm going to just punch your baby in the face for a little while. But you know what? If you let it happen, they're going to get to go to college later, right? There's a greater good happening. So me being shitty in the meantime, it should be fine because they're going to get to go to college later, right? Does that excuse me punching your baby in the face every day? No, it just makes...
I think we view this as different levels of shitty. The point as a whole. I think we view it as two different levels of shitty.
Okay. Well, so I'm getting really, really over the top to try and prove a point. And that is that the idea that you need to put up with shitty behavior at all because something's going to get better later, feels like that should not be an obstacle if there is a divine entity capable of making things not that way. Like, if you're a person, there are rules, but if there's a divine God that is able to change things, and the case is that they're not, like, that's just shitty on the part of that God, right? No matter what happens later, the fact that they're being shitty now is not excused by what's coming later. It's just what comes later, right? The shittiness doesn't get swept under the rug.
I guess at this point, our disagreement can be boiled down to whether or not you view a more short-term, viewing things in the short-term or mid-term, or the very long-term as what's more appropriate to achieve a goal.
No, that's not the argument. That's not where we disagree. We disagree that you say that you have a faith that gives you insight into morality, and that morality is actively stopping you from making moral changes and adjustments now. in favor of someday it'll get better, right? The arc of history bends towards justice. Don't worry about doing shit now. In fact, you're forbidden from doing shit now. What you should be doing is focusing on this other thing, because eventually that other stuff will get itself sorted out. And coming to us saying that you are part of a faith where that's moral and you are trying to get other people involved in that, like, that's where we have a problem.
I never said I was trying to get other people involved.
You just want to unify all of humankind using your religion as a blueprint.
Yeah, but they don't have to be part of the faith.
Then why do you care what they think about women in the Universal House of Justice?
You had a question. I wanted to answer it.
So I think originally the question that I had was, and I want to be clear here, right? My understanding of the Baha'i faith is one that is way less sexist than other religions. That said, there are problems, and this is one of them. And if we only pointed out where we did at the very beginning of our first calls, which is all the places where we can be allies and we can work together, right? Those are all wonderful things. It's just that there are things that need to be contended with. There are problems there. They may not be the biggest, most intense problems, but they are there, and they should be looked at. And that's
right. And this is a big reason why I call. It's like, y'all get me thinking of things that I may have not have thought before. And it's very good to reflect on yourself and be cognizant of what you believe in.
As long as you don't change anything.
Oh man.
I'm not going to get past that. Like, I'm not mad at you, Connor. I want to make that clear. I'm just upset that we can have these conversations. And my whole goal through having conversations like this is to get people to think about things and get people to maybe do a little bit of changing of their own mindset or their worldview or their community. And the fact that you are coming to these conversations fully willing to question and to go for like these deep conversations, but at the end of the day, you're not going to change things. That's depressing. And it makes me wonder why we're talking. Like, is it just mental masturbation?
It's not like we're just sitting on our hands over here. I mean, we are engaged in the local communities around us to work with the local communities to create a better world. Like, maybe like Dale, when Dale said, these were her words specifically last week, to encourage and raise young girls to go achieve their full potential in whatever way they want, and like with career or maybe however they see it.
It's just not within their potential to aspire to the highest levels of leadership in that religion, in your religion. Or it's a concession that nobody can act on.
I would not want to be part of a religion where my full equality was a concession for other people, because other men probably would break off and make their own little sect. Like, oh no, let's save the bigots who would leave and make sure they stay at the expense of the equality of women in this organization. It's very clear where the value is, and it's with the bigoted men who would be upset about it. Let's keep them. Let's make sure they don't leave. Let's placate these people who might go sectarian and do violence or whatever, and instead sacrifice the full equality of... Like, I'm using your words. I didn't know any of this until this call. This isn't me making shit up. You said the religion that you are a part of has made a concession about the full equality of women in order to avoid sectarianism. What that means is that there are people in your organization, in your religion right now, who would leave if women were granted full and equal rights. And you are saying that we would prefer to keep those people in our organization and prioritize their desires over the equality of women. That is the only way that you can spin that. I don't see how you can get around it.
First of all, I've said in a previous call that anyone who is openly bigoted will most likely get kicked out. I can't guarantee it because I'm not there for every single instance.
But how is that not sectarian then? Like, you can't say we can't do these things because people will leave, but also if you're a bigot, you can leave. You're giving two sides of every answer. And it's becoming very clear to me that even though you have done a lot of thinking about this and are convinced that you are coming at this from a rational perspective, there is still a lot of indoctrination that you are dealing with right now. And I would encourage you to sit with these feelings and actively parse through them and pick a side, because you can't straddle the line on every single topic and say yes and no to everything, depending on what is going to get you out of a sticky situation. Either your religion prioritizes unity and prioritizes keeping maybe not open bigots, but bigots in the organization at the expense of women, or they don't care about that because they kick bigots out, in which case your argument about sectarian violence doesn't hold water.
I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, me neither, Connor.
I loved this so much. People are just like, oh, why is Eric not talking? Because this is great. Connor, thank you. And V, thank you. You put such a fine line under something that I was having a very hard time trying to point out. I was going down the first rabbit trail that I could find, and you just lasered in. Connor, the fact that you say, hey, you know what? I don't know. I'm going to think about this. Or, you know, it evidences a lot of really good things about you. It is definitely supports that, Connor, not only are you open and willing to listen and think about things, but it sounds like your morality is better than the religion that you're espousing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that religion may not be necessary anymore.
Well, to clarify, the stuff you just said, the positive stuff you just said about me is highly encouraged by the faith.
I mean, sure. I don't think that sure. I just don't think that that's the only place that you can get that encouragement. Like, anyway.
Well, I know it's not the only place. To be honest, I see everything in a long-term, like the long-term game.
I hear you.
What is going to be the benefit in the long term? And if it may not be the best way for everyone, but I don't think short term will necessarily benefit society as a whole. Because it's the short term that's typically the most easily dismantled.
I mean, I just don't think that applies here. And I also think that evidence is a weak, either an unwilling or unable God who could change things and either, doesn't care or is too powerless to change it. But Connor, we've been on this call. I think
that's a whole different conversation on what God would be willing to do.
You're right. Connor, thank you for this conversation. It has been a long one, but this was fun. Thank you for calling in.
Always a pleasure.
Bye.
Holy crap. I got to piss you off more often. Before we move on, I did see something that I did want to respond to in the comments. It is a very privileged position when I see somebody say that second-class citizens is never a thing they've actually seen exist. And then evidence that they're not in the United States. So if you want to learn more about second-class citizens, look up Plessy versus Ferguson, Plessy. It is a court ruling in the United States that at one time supported separate but equal laws. And maybe that can help you learn a little bit more about second-class citizens and the history that we see. Like we're living in the South of the United States, and the way that certain groups of people are treated here is very real, very evident, and there is a long history of that.
Well, also their entire religion's built on caste systems, so like it depends what they mean by second-class citizen too. Because I'm like, it's a thing.
It was set off at the beginning of the call.
Okay.
But let's move on. This has been fun. So who are we going to talk to next?
I feel like Sal has a very interesting
dealing
thought
with
here.
yeah, dealing with mental schema as a neurodivergent person, how much should we expect others to accommodate us versus expanding our own mental schema? Oh,
So I do want to have this conversation with Sal.
yeah.
I do want to also like clarify and put a little disclaimer here that like we are not healthcare professionals. We do not, specialize in mental health, and we may say something that is not accurate
Yeah.
at some point in this conversation because this is live and we just are going off of what we know. So if there are things that we say or that Sal says that need to be addressed, let us know in the comments and we will correct course.
All right. Sal, you're live with Eric and V.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for taking me. How's it going?
It's going good.
Yeah. So
You were talking for a long time with Connor there, but hopefully this follows nicely.
Yeah. What's up?
I'm glad though that you talked for a long time with Connor because it kind of gave me some time to chew on things and take notes and like get my thoughts together. And because I kind of, it's not so much that I'm asking you a question, it's kind of like presenting an idea, and then I want to riff with you on it and see what you have to say about it. So, I'm actually majoring in psychology, and so all of this information that I'm about to share is based on, information that I've learned in my, undergraduate level psychology classes.
Okay.
So we're learning about like developmental periods throughout childhood and adolescence, and it goes into adulthood too because you never stop learning. But so there's like a historical perspective on this would be that there's different sorts of cultural structures that depend on how fast the society is changing in terms of technology, culture, ideas, stuff like that. So there's three types. There's one called post-figurative, which is stable or traditional society. This would be probably the majority of the human race.
Sal?
Oh, yep.
That's okay. We have to try and abbreviate this the best we can.
We've got about 10, 15 minutes left in the
just due
show.
to the format, we want to be able to
Okay.
to interact with you. Is there a way that we can put this in a nutshell that we can play with?
Yeah. So we basically teach people, and the elders can teach the youth about mental schemas, or you've got moderate change where elders teach the youth and the youth also teach the elders. And then you've got preconfigurative, which is things are moving so fast that the youth has to teach the elders.
Sure.
So the theory is we are in the pre-configurative because things are changing so fast. And so therefore, youth, as hard as it may be, it's like we have to sort of guide our elders and teach them about things with patience, like you're talking to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. I have grandparents who will not understand that they have awful sources for their politics and their understanding of history, and they don't know how to vet their sources. So yeah, I get that. How does that how does that fit into accommodation in neurodivergence?
Well, like, for example, maybe you could think of, say, gender identity as a type of neurodivergence. And
You could, I guess.
Yeah, that feels incredibly uncomfortable for me. Could we go with a different example?
Okay, maybe sort of how much a person is willing to conform to the people around them.
Sure.
Or to not conform, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much is pre-wired in your genes, how much is affected by experience and epigenetics and
Right.
hormones.
Well, and there's only so much that you can do when it comes to that, and accommodation has to be flexible because of it. Let's use autism as an example.
Okay, let's do autism. That's a good one.
Sure. Okay, so I know a lot of people. Most of the people that I know actually are somewhere on that spectrum. And when it comes to accommodations, their needs vary based on who they are and how much, is needed, right? So some people are very, very, very sensitive to loud sounds, or they need to wear certain clothes.
My daughter is, and I love loud sounds.
Right.
Sorry.
Or no, it's okay. Some people need to wear very specific clothes because certain textures are very, very itchy or can be painful, right? Accommodations there would need to follow. But when it comes to talking about accommodations, the fact is we can't make broad strokes claims, because when we do, people get lost along the way, and then we wind up in a world that is just awful.
Well, I'm
for
putting
people.
I'm putting my claim out there, and I'm saying that this is how I digest this information that I'm learning. Is I try to think of, how to apply it. And I'm not saying that my claim is right, but I just, I like to hear, other people's, reactions and what they have to say. So that's what we're doing here.
Sure. I think, unfortunately, the fact is that needing to try and change to fit into the society as you see it, it's going to have benefits, but it also can really suck. And that's not the right choice for some people, and it is the right choice for others. If I were to make a broad strokes claim, I think that would be invalidating a lot of people that are making the best choices for themselves. And because of that, I really can't get any deeper in there, because at that point I'm just erasing people. And, I just couldn't.
I fully believe in autonomy.
Yeah.
As long as you can do whatever you want to do, so long as it's not immediately affecting me, that's your own choice.
Okay. I guess I'm sorry. I must have missed the actual claim. What is your you were mentioning the claim that you make, or the way that you are interpreting this as you're learning about it, Sal? Can you boil that down into like a sentence or two so I'm on the same page as both of you?
Well, let's go back to autism, because I think I kind of wanted to talk about gender identity, but it's okay, or expression. But I guess if we were to apply it to autism, it would be like how much should we accommodate? I'm very happy to see that there's been an increase in things geared to parents with autistic kids, where you can take them to a sensory sensitive screening of a movie. You can.
Are you trying to say that you don't think the world should all make those accommodations? But is that what you mean?
It's a balance.
Yeah.
Because on the other hand, they're gonna encounter loud sounds.
Sure.
And if you can facilitate their toleration of it, that's another way to go.
I mean, to a degree. I've worked in. So when I was in California, it was an SH class. It was severely handicapped. It was called something else here in Texas. But ultimately, I worked with kids who were unable to speak or potty, go to the restroom themselves, who were unable to feed themselves. And there was not an amount of accommodation that I could teach them to, deal with. And because of that, I see it as a really big, unfortunate gray area that everybody's going to need to work around and figure out, because one person's needs are so different from another person's that it just means that we all need to act with some empathy and hope that, we can inspire that same kind of empathy with others.
That's a tall order these days.
It is. And, the thing is, we're not all going to agree. But the fact is, it doesn't mean, everyone not agreeing doesn't mean that there's necessarily a problem. It just means that we're people. We just need to work together to try and make the best version of a world that we can. And no one's ever going to be perfectly happy with it, but it doesn't mean we stop trying. We just do the best we can. And I know that's not. Yeah. Go ahead.
I should clarify from my experience with autism, and I can't say that I have educated myself probably as much as you have, Eric, on autism. But my daughter, I believe, is on the higher end of the spectrum. So, high functioning, Asperger's. So, she's still very, particular about things. Like if you look up Asperger profile, that's her to a T.
I have a family member who, it's not called that anymore, but
yeah, I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can understand why it was understood as separately, and now it's autism spectrum disorder because it looks so different to people.
Sal, what was the point you were trying to make? I know that we only have so much time left, and I want to make sure that we get the chance to respond. It sounded like you were building into a point.
I guess just, I guess I wanted to make the point that sometimes when you disagree with people, the best tactic might be to walk them through directions like they're 5. Because
while that may be the case, I don't think that would be the takeaway that I would want from a conversation about accommodation.
Right. I think the big issue here is that the term that you're using is neurodivergence, but you wanted to talk about gender identity, which are 2 separate things. And so we're trying to have a conversation that was initially about gender presentation probably, and we're now using autism because we're talking about neurodivergence.
Analogy, right. And
so
it's not a good analogy necessarily.
Right. Just because we're missing, we're getting the categories wrong. So you can't really expect somebody who just physically does not have certain capabilities to accommodate other people and explain to them hey, loud noises hurt me. Can you please, vacuum upstairs later or, whatever. Sure, it's great if that can happen, but we can't expect people who can't to do that for us. Talking about gender identity and gender presentation and walking people through the idea that there are more than 2 genders like there are 5. Yeah, I do that all the time. It's exhausting. But it's something that you should be willing to do as long as the other person isn't being obnoxious or a bigot or it's not your 5th time doing it.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. No, and I agree with that. I just think that calling in from a neurodivergent angle is where we got muddy because they're 2 different things.
I'm sorry. I'm really, really passionate in that area. And so I took it down that entire pathway. But I'm glad you chimed in because, yeah. Sal, thank you for calling.
Yeah, I wish I could call in, or at least catch you guys live more. It tends to get past me too much. But I just wanted to say, I am so sorry about your situation right now.
Thank you.
I've had similar experiences with, struggling with, medications and changing doses and everything.
Yeah, it's fun.
But,
yeah.
You both look very good for being off your meds. I'll just say that.
Appreciate it, Sal. Thank
keep
you.
trucking. Make sure you chill out to some relaxing music at the end of the night.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it's going to burn us out a bit. Trying to focus without ADHD medication when you have ADHD is really tough. Sal, thank you.
Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Oh boy, and we had an anti-natalist caller, but I don't think we have time for it today, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you for calling in. I hope you call in next week. So before we move on to reading super chats, this was fun.
I mean, I had fun, but I also feel like I talked the most. So
Here's
it's
the thing.
always fun when I get to be on camera.
Oh, no. I don't feel like I have a laser today. The fact that you were able to like focus in on things feels like it was absolutely needed, and I was not able to do that today. So like I'm grateful. Like you're good.
Okay.
Like this was fun. Although I am in like a really squirrely mood now, and we're going to be arguing about just weird shit. I'm esoteric.
I'm very confused about the
prison thing.
Just so deeply confused about the tone there. I was like, whoa, okay.
Well, I did get heated, but I do want to say that I am in an enjoying it place, and I did not mean to take that from you. So
no, I mean it got me in the right headspace for Connor.
It really did. It really, really did.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so let's read some super chats.
All right. RG sent the weekly banana.
Thank you, RG. Kendall Brast sent $10 and says, I was in Austin for the Bat Cruise last week and wished I could get the opportunity to meet you both. Loved today's show. Wish I had enough to help with your lenses. Love you both. Kendall, thank you. Yeah, I would not feel welcome there. But it is a bummer that we wouldn't have gotten the chance to meet you. But glad you came out, and I hope you had fun either way. And
hope the bats were actually out this time. Last time, the only time I was on the Bat Cruise, the bats weren't
fair enough.
Very out. And Sarah Dye sent $20. Thank you, Sarah. And says, I'm so sorry about your med situation. I know the feeling and the accompanying panic. Insert positive affirmation here.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this isn't a new phenomenon. So like we're not panicking, but we are definitely like, here we go again.
This show definitely took a lot more mental energy for us both, so we're not going to be doing an after show today. Please be patient with us when it comes to putting stuff out. We're going to do our absolute best, but we do want to thank all of you for your support. As always, the super chats go directly back into the show. We're doing the best that we can. If you want to help, we would sincerely appreciate it, and there are lots of ways to help, including, please, if you're watching this and you haven't hit the like button, if you hadn't hit the thumbs up or ring the bell or hit subscribe, please do that. If you're listening on a podcast, we actually haven't put out this call before. Please, if you have the opportunity, leave a good review on your podcast app.
Yeah.
We get about one every 7 months. I think in total we may have 3 reviews across different platforms. If you like our podcast, or even if you just have feedback, we
have a pretty good rating on Spotify, believe it or not. We've got like a 4.7 out of 5 stars. We just don't have reviews, but like people have rated us, which is great.
But rating has helped.
Rating also helps.
All of that stuff really, really does help, and we'd sincerely appreciate it. It doesn't cost anything from you, and it would mean the world to us.
Real quick, John Klein did send $5 and asked, watching The Rings of Power?
Question mark?
Thank you for that.
Sorry, it sounded...
John, I am not. To me, it feels like... I cannot think of a better example of, Saruman than Jeff Bezos. And so to me, seeing Amazon running with Tolkien's work feels like seeing I'm blanking on the name of Saruman's lair, but it feels like Saruman got his claws into something that I love very much. So out of protest, I am not watching it. But I've heard that other people who like the books do appreciate it. So if you enjoy it, that's great. It's like Gollum ass motherfucker. Can't do it.
Okay. Sal Willis sent $10. Thank you. Says, thanks for all you do. You guys are some of the best you can find on YouTube. No one does it like you all.
Aw.
Take care of yourselves. Thank you. We really appreciate it. That's really sweet. What a good way to go out.
Yeah.
All
or
right, everybody.
thank you. I kept wanting to say affiliate, and I'm like, that's not
Or thank.
correct. Or thank.
I would not have known any better. I just
know.
would have nodded and been
I was
like, okay.
affiliate. No, that's somewhere completely different.
Okay.
But yes, thank you.
All right, everybody. We will see you next week. And in the meantime,
We're glad we had this talk.